Alright, let's do another live coding. So last time, you can see behind me today, I'm at the beach again, but this is the surf beach, so not the kite surfing beach, so it's less windy. But I'm still only about like maybe 100 meters from the beach, and just getting my surf on, and this is my in between. So last time was the not quite a rabbit hole, but more just picking up a code base that I hadn't touched in maybe like 6 months or so. Sometimes you shift what problems that you work on, and it just kind of got deprioritized. And then plus, I think it was about an hour of, and most of these live codings have been about an hour of debugging what effectively is like, what when you're integrating with other tools, when you select to integrate with other tools, and when you do that, what slice of functionality that you're going to outsource to those other tools. Hi, pup. Hi, pup. There's a puppy coming up to me to say hi. Um, and you pick and choose what you're going to outsource. Um, and that's all part of trying to delegate as much as you possibly can um, to to outside tools to speed up your development is the goal. But a lot of it is kind of just been working on that. Like I kind of got to a point of seeing where that development is at, and kind of where probably I need to pivot to next. And so I think in an earlier episode as well, it was I showed off. I can go figure out what episode that was exactly, but it showed off what it looks like when you just do code maintenance effectively. So you spend a lot of time authoring code and then testing it to make sure everything is wired up and tested. So that could have been episode 3, was just testing, or it could have been episode 5, just testing. And you spend a lot of time doing that as well. So basically, since last time, basically pivoted away from all that PM2 service wrapper, figuring out what the next unit of work there is. And it's not deprioritized, but I've kind of talked about as well. You always want to test your code so that when you do come back to it in 6 months, you're not undergoing rewrites. And not that I've still done a considerable amount of work with it, so there's not a rewrite. But you always want to write code to minimize you know rewrites, and testing is a great way to assure what your code is doing, so you don't have that rewrite. Because so long as it's tested, then you just have to make sure it integrates with all your other tools. Um, but yeah, let's dive in. Today we're going to be working on getting Vue.js shoved into a WordPress backend, and I had started that journey, so I thought that was an interesting thing to kind of cover and go into. Um, since let's pop up and screen share at this point. Let's see if I can. So I'm still learning this OBS live stream software, so I will get better at it. um, so I had built, just as part of trying to do my own side hustle. I built this like uh, website on my way down here for a group of people. Um, and ideally, what I would have wanted to do is, and I built this kind of using a Squarespace style web builder. And in order to get that type of person who's not technical using my own software, I'm kind of determined that it ought to be using WordPress as a backend. And then particularly in the realm of WordPress, um, and I probably would consider it out of scope for this live coding to cover what WordPress is. Um, you should be probably technical if you're listening to this. But what's really worth giving a read is this advanced custom fields plugin for WordPress, where you can effectively come up with data structures that are it's kind of like building a user interface data entry on top of a database using WordPress in a headless mode. And I encourage you, if you're, reading this or watching this and don't know what these are, go look up all that stuff. It's all good. Another one I came across is Contentful, which is like strictly about being a headless content management system. But I, worked with WordPress back in 2010, so I know it well. Ran a consultancy off of it, and advanced custom fields is the shit in terms of WordPress. So, it's on the level where I conferred with someone who's like a director level. I don't know how big of a company is that. Doesn't matter. Basically, someone else pretty senior in the industry. He looked at my stack and approach and architecture, advanced custom fields with headless WordPress. You jumpstart your backend. He said to me, he's like, I've done the same thing. So this is a decent approach. The only thing it's really missing is you kind of lose the page builder functionality, and you can rely. WordPress has its I forget what they call it, WordPress builder content editor. It's some like new thing that didn't exist when I used WordPress. Um, let's see, we'll figure out what it's called. But it's effectively like a Squarespace. Their newer one is called uh, Guggenheim, maybe. WordPress yeah, Gutenberg. So I'm not really a fan of it. I like to just code, but in terms of, you're having customers working on stuff, they kind of want that experience. It's like Squarespace these days. So this is kind of, I think, what they've got going on. And, I started looking just like with that PM2 of last episode. So episode 6, you start going down the rabbit hole of like looking at so in other words, if we go back to like I'm trying to give customers the ability to have their own web editor and ability to edit stuff to crank out websites like this very quickly. And this was for a glamping site, which is kind of cool, just to pop up some photos because it's pretty dope. Let's see if I can go to their other. So they have like the Airstream on site, and this is more just for fun than any kind of technical value. But the idea was that I was just driving down and just bartered with these guys to build them a website for they have these glamping tents that look kind of like this. Just bartered with them, building them a website for free stay, and then there's like all around, just tropical beauty. Which I guess if I go here, it kind of looks like this photo. So, I started looking at like I did this in a day, and it's like, okay, that's probably about the speed in which you want to be able to do things for people, um, and you can't get yourself into that mode of doing front end stuff for people, um, without a tool that's kind of that drag and drop style. So, I mean, WordPress kind of gives that to you, but I think, because I spend a lot of time on this live coding, talking about orchestrating services so you can do those integrations, basically, um, I wound up kind of doing an investigation into like Vue.js. What did I find? Drag and drop builder or something. And it just turns out there's like a ton of stuff that's like this drag and drop Squarespace style for Vue.js was kind of what I was particularly curious about, since my front ends are probably going to be built in Vue.js and not whatever WordPress has. But I don't know. I mean, you end up like looking at this kind of stuff, and I wind up making I think my decision making when it comes to tool selection is you you wind up having to the more tools that you depend on from the outside, and I've kind of joked in the past that it's kind of like being a stock trader. You're speculating if the tool is going to be around in 5 years. You're speculating if they're going to introduce breaking changes. You're speculating if they're going to suddenly make you pay for it. You're looking at in assessing things like cost. This one wants what, a whopping $450 per month. I think that price point almost makes me want to vomit. But yeah, and then you're also having to make the judgment call that their whatever tool you rely on might not get you fully what you're looking for either. So, um, like to give it for instance, like at some point, like somewhere, if I go into FTP, I have for on my existing WordPress, I paid some contractors to get. Sure, let's install that. Whatever. Even while we're live coding, who cares? um, but I had paid. I'm sure this is it. I had paid some contractors to get a bunch of stock photos for me, and you know, it's kind of like that's just sitting on some EC2 instance in Amazon, and I got to get that out and get that into S3. And now, like, I get in my head a lot about, how, the cost to build. And I think a lot of people in tech have this magical idea that you can outsource things, but unfortunately, and I have learned, spending probably tens of thousands on contractors, contractors are good for some things, and that it's the same thing for outsourcing to other tools. I think you always ought to pick some like bigger, more stable products that are cheap. But if you start trying to build a SaaS business where you have 10 different outsourced tools, and you have, a monthly cost that's like $1,000, like you're gonna need, and let's say the maximum your customer is willing to spend is 15, that already signals to you that you need probably 100. I think it's something like 100 customers in order to float your own boat. You need more than that, but you need probably 100 bare minimum to like cope with between the risk and your raw cost, or you're passing the cost on to your customers. And it's just one of those things of like, for instance, if what did I Google last night? It was like file upload, image uploader, then it was DigitalOcean. Where was that? Let's see if I can just search history. Yeah, and I just like found, yeah, how to handle file uploads in Vue.js, and then you scroll down, and it's like it's some code to write to handle your own file upload and build your own service. But it's to write your own code is never the end of the world. A lot of people, and it is true to an extent, and especially I cover on these live codings just how much time I spend testing my own infrastructure, and it does take a considerable amount of time. But I just think that that is kind of the stuff of life. I mean, yes, there's sort of a brilliant vision out there that you could have a loosely decoupled and decentralized ecosystem where, let's say, I became a customer of this Builder.io product, to like, do nice mix and matches of components that I develop, and I could figure out how to integrate with their stuff, and I could like, even use WordPress because they support. I'm highlighting here this headless CMS, like great, and then I could become like a very vocal customer of theirs, and I could influence the direction that the product goes in. And I could like bet that I'm going to build fast enough to like have them kind of outsource to them a significant amount of my own product, and they're going to figure out a way to economically make it much cheaper. But that's and I'm someone who's not tried that strategy enough except outside of my day jobs to say whether or not that's an effective strategy or not. And I'm sure that it does work for people, and I have worked inside the businesses that are small enough to get a good insight into like how they outsource to SaaS. But I also have heard many stories of people being burned by hidden costs or by like broken backwards compatibility, or instead of like spending as much time as I do testing infrastructure and orchestrating, you're spending instead time updating from they, are introducing some breaking change, or they're introducing some like, new hidden cost or something like this. So these all tend to be, issues that you deal with when it comes to tool selection. And so, you know, I like to make the reference that one time I wrote, a simple database in about 1,000 lines of code. And all that really means, all a database is, you're writing to one file and you have, some set offsets Um, you know, and you're just, I think with that database, it was just storing JSON, and it even allowed like, simple queries and lookups, and it was pretty much the same speed as like MySQL under certain conditions. So it's just like, it just goes to show that like 1,000 lines of code, like, yeah, you do have to like manage it and test it, but to some extent, like, you can go ahead and outsource if you want to, but just know what your risks are of getting into it, and then just accept that life is work. There's no magic, silver bullet. But I think that, on the other hand, customers do want something you can just click around in. But when it comes to like, I figured out with something like a tool like this, and the only reason that this tool is necessary is that they're trying to integrate, or at least this allows them to integrate with Airbnb, because they want to have like 10 different listings. And so then they can list on, if I go to that website that I found, we want the marketing site. Let's try this. Come on, Smoothboo. Okay. So basically, like, you can have Booking.com, Airbnb, VRBO. I don't know what that is, but that way you aren't double booking on off of any of these platforms, and you can synchronize messaging so your life isn't spent. You're if you're running an Airbnb business, you're trying to like turn beds and clean and handle broken, utilities. You don't want to have to manage all your marketing channels, but you want the benefit of all the marketing channels. So that's what a tool like this provides. And the only reason something like this is like absolutely necessary is because Airbnb is a closed API, so they select who their partners are, and you have a limited selection of who to work with. But with a tool like this, or whether it's this or Squarespace, there's a way to you know, algorithmically plug into the, or sorry, there's a way to like inject your own, code into this so that you're kind of wrapping the presentation and then able to build other integrations on top. But I mean, there are ways, in other words, to shortcut your path to market. Use kind of a no-code or WYSIWYG to get a customer what they want quickly, and then work backwards to an ecosystem. But it's that also, as soon as I start going down that path, I start getting real specific about the product that I'm building, and that advice, starts to become less relevant to someone watching this. And if you're considering building a startup, but there will always be some, it's I think it's always great to have those fluid engagements with customers. But one of the main assumptions I made with this business is like, it's what's called in the business world the difference between a red tide market and a blue ocean. So in other words, with a red tide market, it's a defined market. You know that there's a need for it, and you know what the customer needs in order to feel satisfied by it. So anyway, let's blow all that away. Let's do some code today. So today the work is, let's see, let's go. I don't know. This could be interesting. I may have neglected a pretty important piece here, which could bum me out, but that's okay. So one of my videos was, discussing a data transfer between computers, specifically for getting ready for this travel. So go to applications. So in other words, I may have only transferred my microservice files and none of this stuff. It's okay. We'll just install a new one and we'll see where we get. Alright, so if I go to products, CASA, and maybe it's InfraCloud. New WordPress. Let's try this. SaaS InfraCloud, new WordPress. User, I don't know. Let's try that. Plugins and themes. I don't know. Let's try it. It might need sudo. I don't know. Okay. Um, version, fine. Unzipping, downloading. This is a script I wrote that I don't know what that means. That's weird. Okay, yeah, I probably need sudo. So on Mac, you need root in order to write to the application directory. Um, this is just a tested microservice that downloads the latest version of WordPress, and then it's supposed to write a new WordPress to wherever we request it to, which should be right here. But it's clearly having some issues. So it basically seems like it's saying, alright, let's see if we can. Password. Alright, I guess first step is first, let's see if we can get onto the PHP my admin. Status. It's probably this one. Change root password. And you'd think it's probably problematic for me to share passwords on a live stream, but you just change it in prod, no big deal. Sassworks one is not that secure anyway. Cannot log in. So there's got to be an issue, but that password just did not get set. So sometimes when you deal with infrastructure code, you can make assumptions that, in other words, I think the logic works out that you get your infrastructure to a working state. You don't really mess with it too much after that. And it's going to be a matter of figuring what the heck. Type error. Can try to run for verbose and see if it comes up and tells us what the heck this is. Cannot read properties of undefined exports. Okay. So at least it's telling us what the heck's going on here. So it's saying that it's expecting this. Okay. So yeah, this kind of falls in line with what I was already saying, which is that sometimes with infra code, because you don't, once you set it up, you don't tinker with it again. You can get into a state of assumption that it's working, and then you go onto a new installation and it's not working. So that can often happen, and it's fine. Let's do change root password. See what we can find. So that's there. Alright, so this, we probably don't, that's the assumption, is it has this dot infra that we don't need. Access denied. It's bizarre, I guess. So we have this change new password, and we can just double check that it. That's also bizarre. Sometimes, that error message is from kind of a separate, because last episode dealing with the PM2 stuff. So it's passing that in, and then it's basically saying it fails to connect. So next thing let's do, let's make sure this thing is online, because the MySQL server may not be online. But last episode, doing the whole using password. Okay, so I think we do MySQL. Last week doing the whole PM2 wrapper, that was one error. And the second error that came up was like it couldn't write some cache file. And then this error, that's this one, that's that error. And then the other error, yeah, the other one is one that's more relevant. But again, it's more because sometimes you assume your infrastructure code works because you only run it once. So, testing your infrastructure, it's kind of diminishing returns. You don't need to, once your infrastructure is up, you don't need to re-provision. So, how many times, unless you're running a major company and provisioning boxes all the time, it's diminishing returns. Even for me, who tends to be more of a over-engineering profile. Okay. What do we got? This is very Windows looking. I don't like that. Here. Sounds fine. But really, that's bizarre. So it's saying it doesn't. So this could be. Why is MySQL not found? That's super bizarre. Next thing we can do is go to this XAMPP manager. So it's saying that MySQL exists. Again, this could be an issue of assuming that the infra is working the way you want, but it's not. So let's go to MAMP. So right here, it's kind of basically there's some code here to make sure that it's in the path. But that's probably only for, that's exhausting. So yeah, where I kind of messed up is you always have your bash profile set up, add folder to path, Mac bash profile. So yeah, you should always probably, keep your bash profile in some kind of like private gist to yourself. So this is kind of a new computer of setting up. So for anyone that, is working with Mac, this probably is similar or the same on any Linux flavor. So yeah, you want this line right here. All right. Let's do a new one. Whatever. I guess that is weird since I've never added this line. I do have some code thing that, or some service that technically it oops, it should set up your environment. So I don't want to dig that far into the weeds today. I'm just gonna fix this. It's a one-time thing, and I just don't believe in over-engineering that much, as much as I am that type of a person. There. There. Okay. MySQL localhost, user root. Seems like it just lets me in. And then using the password, seems like it said, screw you, guy. So this just seems like some issue of change root password. Let's try it. Not the funnest way to spend a live coding session, I have to say. And not the best idea, I suppose, either. Okay, so it's using MySQL admin, which, like, honestly, should be sufficient. You shouldn't need anything else. All right, let's try this script again. MySQL admin, you shouldn't have those, privilege constraints. Or sorry, it shouldn't matter. So it's just saying it can't. MySQL admin. Okay, that could be why. So it gets to this, and then basically what it's saying is include this folder right here into the path. And there should be a MySQL admin. So that could be maybe part of the error. There it is. So it should include that at the runtime. Um, hmm. Source bash profile. Now let's run it. So that's not the issue. But here, let's do MySQL admin. And what the heck is it running? MySQL admin. New root. Mhm. Okay, that's cool. I should change the password. That sucks. Okay, what else do we got? MySQL admin. Change root password. Let's try this again. Not the funnest piece of code to debug, I gotta say. It's saying connect to server. So that's probably getting stuck here, I'd say. Alright, so I did like, we'll probably get the foo message. Oh, there's another dog coming to say hi. Hi, buddy. How are you? Let's try to see him. There he is. So it gets there. Probably gets this test MySQL function. Maybe. Oh, there's the other dog I like from yesterday. Hi, buds. Oh, hello. This one's super cute. Hi, buddy. Oh, oh yeah. Oh, very cute. Oh, come on. Don't pee on my car. I like that dog, though. It's a fun dog. I like this one. Hi, buddy. And there they go. Just marking the territory. Um, okay, let's see. New password. Old password. It sucks when I set off to do live code and then it just goes in some other direction. How much of the technology experience is that? So I don't know where the hell it's even getting. Get files path. So something must have happened where I believe I store credentials somewhere locally in a file. Um, mhm. But hmm, do something like this. Sometimes you can throw hackiness at it all. Yeah, here. Uh-huh. And then we'll do this. Try that. This is just basically saying, if any of this throws an error, it could be in a weird state, and should at least get to that try this message, but and it could be getting here. And it could be getting to a success message here, which it shouldn't. Okay, so it gave us an error message, and okay, so we have an access denied here. So now we just want to see what the heck the output is before. That's bizarre too. It doesn't exactly sync. So we're in the base. Darwin. Love hacking us. Cool, I think. Let's do sudo. I don't know. Could have been an issue. I think it's trying to reboot MySQL right now with the new password. This is kind of looking crazy though. It's saying refusing. This is it could be because I did the verbose. Okay, let's get rid of verbose. Cannot read the property of. Where are we at in our stream? We're at 38 minutes, so we'll see. Maybe today is just doing more stuff related to moving down to Mexico for the season. Not my ideal, but sometimes you make your code more robust when you reset it up on another computer, and that way, when you set it up for some other developer or contractor later down the road, you. Okay, so now it's saying basically it seems like it gets to running password. Okay. Okay. In all of those error messages, let's try to make this not a bunch of crap code, I suppose. So let's do this. So this is nope, 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 nope. This. Yes. So it just says it's a don't know about this is status. Well, we're trying to test this test MySQL connection. And it should be in here. Yeah. Cannot read properties. This is another one of these. Okay. What? Hold on. What? Okay, hold on. This is this, here. There. Okay. I don't know. Try that. Just unwind changes. This is a real hack in the slash way to do all of this, by the way. Okay. So at least now the status message logs correctly. How it got into this state, I just have no idea. Um, you know, so for something like this, what I would do is no, I'd go infra-cloud and XAMPP. It's kind of bizarre. More recently, when I don't know what the heck I'm doing, I just log a branch by date. Which, when you're doing the kind of logistics that I have been recently, you can even see like this is how freshly provisioned this laptop is. I don't even. The only reason to set this up is just because it's so annoying. Yeah. The joys of provisioning new laptops. Intracloud, XAMPP, internal. So I don't have any good. What I would say is, like, if I don't know quite exactly why things are in the state they are, especially when you're provisioning something new, especially when it's getting in your way, especially when it's diminishing returns to test your infrastructure provisioning, some of this diff, and then, I look at like this line right here. I always try to remove needless console output, and I just don't know what the hell this is doing. This stuff all seems fine, I guess. What the hell is that about? I have no idea. This is just that try catch block. Let's remove that, try this. And then this was just fixing the output. And why this didn't work, like, it could have been sometimes with this type of thing, again, like I go and I say, like if you're tinkering with getting your infrastructure set up, especially by using scripts, especially because you're trying to create an automated set of provisioning tools, you can sometimes get into a state where things work. Then you have a blind spot that if you were to go provision on a new box or you lack tests, because sometimes writing tests can be a little bit overkill, you know, dealing with stuff like this just happens. Let's remove those console messages now. All right, that was that was that was trying, and by trying I mean frustrating. All right, so this nope 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 nope. Let's see if I can go up in the history. Here, this one. Hey, let's try that. So the goal was to provision a new there. Perfect. That's kind of more like what we want. So this is probably this is what we wanted. Cool. So this is the password for the um, the WordPress instance, and uh, maybe I'd probably cut off today's live code session here, um, and just chalk things up to more talking rather than live coding, because there's always lessons to unpack with this stuff, and I'm kind of still tuning to what makes the most sense to live code. I do think covering technical topics that are interesting is good, but I think with anything YouTube, that is in the WordPress infra. All right, cool. So, a couple things going on. I always want to make sure if I commit something that there's a branch. All right, I think there is a test for this library, which is outstanding. This XAMPP stuff, but I think it's mostly testing Ubuntu since that's production. Um, that's why Mac. Who cares? It's just Mac. Where else are we? Then we want to go to WordPress next. Cool. If I'm removing a console message, I'll just push it straight to main. All right. What's the wisdom today? Let's do this guy. Come on. So I think the way I do this in OBS to make things right is, I gotta go do some stretching after this. Um, there's this like thing in OBS where you can just add scenes. So I have my scene where I just click a button instead of show everybody me fiddling in my live streaming stuff. Um, but it will often happen that you're gonna have chore work in technology, and it's often gonna happen that you'll have things come up like today that you just don't really want to deal with. Um, but it's just you're paying a cost. It's a hidden abstract technical cost in this case, obviously, but this is the cost of me switching laptops, and um, the surprise that even during live coding today was that I have no idea what I maybe omitted or didn't omit transferring um, from my other laptop before departing, which may or may not be problematic, but I'll go and think about that after. Um, but this is also a justification for, it's not to say that every person that works with computers on the planet should have backups of backups of backups, but um, you know, having those types of things. I do have backups. There's a a Mac OS Time Machine backup sitting on some hard drive, so I could obtain that hard drive. But it could also be the case that I made a sound decision, and you just rely on the engineering, and because you never really allow yourself mentally to deviate from orderliness, confidently. That's why I don't, stress out, and I'm able to like live code. And if a surprise comes up, I know there's some logical reason for things. And I maybe prefer going back to the beginning of this discussing, you know, would you go and like build your own stuff from scratch, building a database and 1,000 lines of code, sacrificing, that you now have to manage a bunch more of stuff. Um, that's one approach of doing it. But I think I've personally chosen that strategy just because at the end of the day, if something breaks, you have to be the one that goes in and fixes it. So you're always advantaged too on some level, and that would go for whether you're, owning a house or renting a house. Even if you rent, you're still advantaged to know how to fix a toilet, fix a light bulb, build something that you need. Um, so, there's a fly buzzing around my face. What else would I say? So yeah, I mean, I think it's just mindset that sometimes you just get in. You don't have to like of course, when we talk about money, business, product, shipping things, you can get, if we look at something, a session like today, it can get pretty frustrating. Um, that you hit walls, but these are all walls that are expected, in terms of uh, you know just changing laptops. And this is why I personally put a considerable amount of time into things like different backup mechanisms. And whereas I don't think you really need to ever get to the point where you have laptop provisioning scripts, fully robust. And today it was just a matter of setting up one line of bash profile. Um, wasn't the end of the world. I'm sure that it was something like that in there that made things go wrong. And I'm sure that given that the script outputted the way it did at the end, it's sort of that WordPress provisioning thing outputted the password information to log into the new WordPress instance. So I think I was going to remark, but didn't. Like, there is a WordPress CLI, that didn't exist in 2010 when I worked with them. And perfectly doable to just rely on that CLI tool to do provisioning. But um, I think it's just for myself. It's one of those calls of like I already kind of knew how to do it, and it's a couple lines of code. So just why it's, yes, like in a way you're managing more, but yes, in a way like you're you just have to carefully choose what you allow to be a black box when it comes to what tools you choose to outsource to, because it just doesn't magically work out that there's this utopia where you can like reliably outsource everything. And I can talk more in depth, and I believe in one of the episodes, I went through. I can probably look up what episode that is actually. I went through one of my contractors' code. Great guy, I love that guy, but that was probably, mm, could have been the episode 5, but I'm not sure. Um, and it's just like contracting and outsourcing. It's good for scoped things, but you're gonna have to be the one always at the end of the day that gets in and wraps stuff up. And you do have to communicate with people, whether that's vendors or teammates. I do think that you can hit considerable gains, but you need to have an alignment of money. So obviously, in a big company setting where budgets seem to be in the millions of dollars, you can float that type of teamwork. But if you're just hustling a startup, relying on ecosystems of vendors that aren't big companies but using like scrappy startup tools, I don't know. It's a risk profile, but the most you can do is be aware of the risks that you take with the decisions that you make. So next time, hopefully at some point here, I will dig into getting Vue.js wrapped up in the back end because I think that's a cool advancement to make and show off. But yeah, until next time, and as always, just Whether this, gets watched a year from now, if you put questions in the comments, I will try to answer them. See you next time.